Please try and pick up this volleyball, however you best see fit. All right, that's okay. So now, cup your hand a little bit and bring your wrist down a little bit more to get more pressure on the fingertips.
Like that?
Yeah. Okay. That's good. In the unprompted trial, the patient's longitudinal arch was more relaxed and had less curvature in it. And so, and the proximal transverse arch similarly was more shallow and had less curvature, which gave less stability in his grip. And the shallower angle or the less curvature in the longitudinal arch gave him less distribution of power and flexion to each of his fingers on the ball. On the second trial, when I instructed him to cup his hand more and create more of like a dome with his palm, the longitudinal arch had much more curvature the second time when he had cupped his hand, which allowed the flexor muscles for the fingers to flex more and give more power to his grip. Similarly, the proximal transverse arch also had more curvature. It was more flexed, and that gave more stability to his grip, allowing him to grip much harder, to have a more stable grip on the ball. His grip was more stable the second time because of the more curvature in his proximal transverse arch. His wrist also had a little less flexion in it. It was closer to neutral than the second trial, which allowed for more flexion of his finger flexor muscles in a position closer to neutral rather than in a more flexed position. The longitudinal arch, the intrinsic muscles are the flexor digitorum profundus superficialis, and that kind of contributes to the curvature of the arch, whether it has more curvature or less curvature, and the flexing of the fingers on the ball and spreading out distributing the force on the ball. For the proximal transverse arch, the intrinsic muscles are the wrist flexors and extensors, which stabilize the wrist in the movement, allowing him to have a more stabilized grip on the ball and be able to put more force onto the ball. The intrinsic muscles were the interossi, which contributed also to the stability of the proximal transverse arch by contributing to the stability of the proximal region of the metacarpals during the movement, which created along with the carpal bones, create the proximal transverse arch. In the distal transverse arch, the intrinsic muscles are also similarly the interossi that contribute to the spacing of the metacarpals in the distal region, which enable the forming of the arch. Because of the space between them, they're able to get that curvature, creating the distal transverse arch. When there's poor arch management in the palm, that can lead to a weak and unstable grip, which can cause overuse or underuse of muscles in all types of movements, including gripping something in the wrist and also in the palm, which can have long-lasting effects.